Welcome to another video here on the Giant Take YouTube channel. My name is Josh, and I am joined by my friend, my co-host on the Giant Take podcast, Alex. We appreciate you coming to watch another video. If you haven't already, go check out our New York Giants versus Cincinnati Bengals preseason Week 2 recap. That's the last video out here on this YouTube channel. And we're back now a couple days later on the YouTube grind. Yes, I'm just going to address it once again. If you watched that, I am not at home. I'm on vacation, but I'm still grinding, still going away doing these Giant Take videos, but the audio might be a little worse. The video might be a little worse. But hopefully everything's okay. Hopefully there's no lag, and we should be able to get this thing done. So without further ado, the title of this video hopefully says it all, or the description, but let me just explain what we're going to do. The wide receiver room, this preseason for the Giants has been a big, not a big, but I would say after the top 3 or 4, kind of a question mark for who's going to make the roster after that point. And there's been a lot of rising and falling throughout training camp, and especially in these 2 preseason games, especially in this second preseason game against the Bengals. A lot of guys performed that were not sort of the top 4 because those guys didn't really play. So other players had the opportunity to step up. So we're just going to talk about starting out in training camp, what we had, and then going through each wide receiver on the roster and just kind of talking about have they risen, have they fallen, have they stayed the same, give a little explanation. And at the end, we're going to give our predictions, our 6 or our 7. We'll see what we're going to do there for the New York Giants wide receivers. Alex, first of all, how are you? You ready to get into this one?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm excited to get into it. The wide receiver room, like you said, is certainly like a really it's like a dynamic group. You have different skill sets. You have different, skill sets. I don't know what other word I can use besides that, really. But there's a whole bunch of different options for Brian Daboll and company to decide what kind of offense do the Giants want to run. Do they want to be, a physical wide receiver offense where you see a guy like a Colin Johnson and a Kenny Golladay, both of them on the field at the same time, for example? Or do you want some shorter guys, more slot guys, more Wandel Robinson types, more Richie James types? And there's lots of options. Some of these players have been rising, some of them have been falling, and I'm certainly excited to get into it. I guess let's talk first about what wide receivers, kind of everyone had initially, and specifically what we had initially in terms of pre-training camp, what wide receivers we thought were going to make the roster. So we had Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Tony, Wandel Robinson, Darius Slayton, and Richie James. I think that was pretty much the popular 6 before training camp. But since then, obviously, some of those guys have performed better. Some of them have performed worse. Some of them have risen. Some of them have fallen. So I sound like a poet We're
going to be using those words a lot.
Yeah. So
in this video.
I guess we'll just go through the roster right now, the active wide receivers that are pretty much still on the roster. And pretty much, I guess we can just get right into it with Alex Bachmann. I think we're going in alphabetical order, if I'm correct, which is actually kind of funny. But Alex Bachmann, I'd say in general, he has risen. He had a big game against the Bengals this past Sunday. In terms of what he's done at training camp, nothing really significant, at least from what we've seen when we were out there the few days we were there, and also from what we've heard from people who were there and the beats. But he played well in the preseason game, which obviously is more important even than camp. So certainly a riser, and we'll see how he does going forward. But Alex Bachmann obviously had a huge game. His connection with Davis Webb was on point on Sunday.
Going on to the next player here in that alphabetical order you mentioned, Alex, CJ Board. And I would say, or we would say, because we did these together, he has fallen due to injury. CJ Board hasn't really been on the field consistently, and it's funny because he was probably our most consistent wide receiver last year, if I'm not mistaken, right? And now you go.
He was always there,
right? I felt like
he got injured too last season. He got his rib injury, which of course he has again now, which is kind of funny.
But I do remember, or at least I thought I did that. And it was either last year or the year before that, but I think it was last year when we had all the injuries around the wide receiver room. I felt like he was the most consistent and the guy that was out there the most. Him and I feel like Colin Johnson were. So it's interesting now that he goes into this training camp and this preseason process injured and kind of falling down people's depth charts, if not making the roster. And I don't know. I just think there's not really much to say about him because he hasn't been on the field. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Keelan Doss. Funny story. He actually posted us on his Instagram story. So shout out to him. Rooting for him to make the roster. He had a really nice catch against the Bengals this Sunday. It was like a one-handed grab, like kind of twisting and turning. And it was pretty impressive. And he overall has been performing pretty decent throughout training camp. I wouldn't say he's necessarily risen or fallen, really. I think he's probably more towards fall, if we're being honest. But definitely not one of those guys like a CJ Board or the next guy we're about to talk about who have really, really fallen.
I mean, Alex, we know that he's on the low end of this 90-man roster because he was getting cut. He got cut, literally, from the team. Robert Foster gets a season-ending injury. Keelan, we're going to bring you back. How awkward is that? Like, if they went to him and said, you got cut, found out a few hours the next day later, Robert Foster has a season-ending injury. Do you want to come back to the team? And I guess he's fine with it because he's making money, right? But it's just weird now because he has that kind of guy on his shoulder in the way that, like, or someone always, he's got to always look behind him because he doesn't know if he's the next guy because he already knows that he probably is from already getting cut this training camp, really. So it's really interesting there. But do you have any other thoughts on that before we go?
I was just going to say now, he had the second chance now, and can he make the most of it? Can he impress during training camp and during the rest of preseason? We'll see. Don't count anyone out yet.
Sure. But you can count this guy out from stretching in practice, and that is the man, KG, Kenny Golladay, the guy the Giants signed a couple off seasons ago, 4 year, $72 million deal. He has fallen. Definitely. Will he make this roster? 99% yes, or 100%, right? There's no way he's not making it. But it doesn't mean that we can't say he's fallen throughout training camp and preseason. He doesn't seem to stretch in practice. He doesn't seem to try in practice. He doesn't seem to perform on the field when he's actually playing. I don't believe he played, right, this game. Was it because of an injury or just rest against the Bengals?
No, he played a little bit.
Did
he had one catch, I believe, yeah.
Okay, well, whatever it is, you look towards the Patriots game last week, and the guy dropped a pass right in his hands in the red zone, which is the reason we paid him, to make plays in coverage. That's what he's known for. He's not known to get separation. He's not one of those speedy wide receivers in the NFL. He's known one-on-one, throw the ball up to him. I mean, it wasn't like a floater down the field, like he's, known to make those big catches, but it was a pass right to him.
No one was covering him.
Yeah,
no one was covering him.
Exactly. So, and he drops it. And this is what our star wide receiver, our number one guy supposedly on the depth chart, is dropping balls in the preseason. And it just didn't seem like he's dropping. There's the whole video, Alex, that between him and Wandel Robinson that you saw running that drill, he's running way slower. And I know Bobby Skinner had a good retweet there. He makes a point that, like, oh, look, the outside wide receiver is running slower than the slot guy. And yes, that's true, but there's a difference between, sure, I can probably run slower than all the players in the New York Giants. Maybe I can outrun no lineman or two, but obviously I'm going to be slower than Richie James. I'm not a professional athlete. But it's a difference. What if I'm just not trying in that instance? That's what Kenny Golladay was doing. Awful comparison, I know. Really bad. But my point is, it didn't even look like Kenny Golladay was running hard because he wasn't trying. And that's why I think he didn't show as much effort as Wandel Robinson. Wandel Robinson could be moving slow as hell in that drill. I don't care. But at least he's showing effort. He's pumping his arms. He's moving his feet. That shows me effort. That's what I like to see. And Kenny Golladay, he just hasn't shown that at all in practice.
Yeah. Next player we got here is Richie James. He was kind of one of those guys. He was in our initial 6-man wide receiver roster to make the team. And I think he's pretty much cemented his spot now. It was kind of like a question mark. Like, he's probably going to make the roster, maybe not. But I think he's probably gone up to 90% plus now of odds of making the roster. He's been doing good in the kick return game, in the punt return game. He's pretty quick. He has good feet, good routes. And in general, he made a couple impressive catches in training camp and obviously had that very nice route and catch for a touchdown against the Patriots in preseason as well. So Richie James, certainly a riser.
Yeah, and going on to another riser here, Colin Johnson, like we already talked about, kind of has that connection already from Daniel Jones, or to Daniel Jones, from last year, because he was one of the only wide receivers who stayed healthy. But he's a riser here in training camp, targeted heavily by Jones and Tyrod Taylor, especially in the preseason game against the Bengals a couple days ago. Not so much action in the Patriots game, but I'm sure he had a couple catches, although I don't know.
Yeah, he had the fumble in the Patriots game, if you remember.
Right. And that was where, hold on to the ball, Colin. And that could be definitely a factor towards the end of things when they look to those 6, 7, if they do 7 guys on the roster for wide receivers wise. He was a practice squad guy last year who got called up because of the injuries. I could definitely see that happening again because this room is so thin with their injury history, and he could definitely start on the practice squad, get called up, whatever. I don't want to predict his future. I just want to say that Colin Johnson, he's been a rise in preseason and training camp this year. Sorry.
Yeah. Marcus Kemp is who we have next. Really hasn't done much. There's nothing really to say. I hate saying that, but he hasn't risen or fallen. I guess if you really want to think about it, because he hasn't done much, I guess he's fallen. But nothing really to say about him. And Josh, you can move on to Wandel.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting all the big names here, Alex. I feel bad. I got Galladay, I get Wandel. But, it's all right because you get to speak on them too when I'm finished here. Wandel Robinson really stayed the same. Has done nothing in the preseason, but he's kind of been used in a lot of different weird plays, I like to say in quotes, like during training camp and even in the games. He's done the end arounds. Sometimes he's even thrown the ball, I feel like, right? Or no, that's Kadarius Tony. But maybe, I don't know. But I know he's definitely done end arounds. He's definitely done a lot of motion, the bubble screens, what's the motion that Justin talked?
Josh listing off all the Madden plays.
No, I'm trying to orbit motion that Tyreek Hill does. He was doing that where the wide receiver kind of moves in literally like a circle around the wide receivers on the left or right side. Anyway, it's getting to the point now. Wandel Robinson really stayed the same, though. Has he been injured, too? I feel like he's been nicked up.
Maybe a little bit, but I don't think he's missed any practices and certainly no games. He's been decent in training camp. He's been definitely doing some positive things, but in preseason games, he's kind of not produced at all. So that's kind of like where we've put him in the middle. He's looked good in training camp, but not so much in the games. So that's why we're gonna have him at the same level, if that makes any sense. Another player at that level, Sterling Shepard, nothing to his own fault. He's injured, still recovering. I guess that's it for him. I'm going to let Josh, talk more about another player while I sit here idly by.
Well, I'll go to Shepard first. The Giants cut down to 80 players today by basically just putting people on IR in the PUP list. Did he go on the PUP list officially? Did he go on IR?
He did not.
Or he was already on the PUP list? Or was he already
He might have already been on the PUP list.
I think he's already been on the PUP list, so that's why. Okay.
Yeah.
So, just injured, and hopefully he comes back this season and proves something. The guy has been injury-prone his entire career, really, and was hoping when Odell Beckham left a few years ago now to be that number one guy. And he's had those opportunities. Has he lived up to them? I mean, it's not his own fault, really. He's just been injured a ton. On to the next guy, though, like Alex was saying, David Sills. The Sills army is strong after the game against the Bengals a few days ago. Connection with Daniel Jones, he's had a lot of it in the preseason, but especially in that Bengals game. He's risen. Will he make the roster? It's going to be a question again. Again, another year where David Sills is a question mark if he's going to make the roster or not. We'll have to see. But yes, for as of now, he has risen so far in preseason.
Yeah. My favorite, Darius Slayton. I'd say he's like the same / fallen. I think he's fallen in public perception. I think we can all admit that. But in terms of his performance, I don't think from the start of training camp to the end of training, because that's what we're talking about, the start of training camp till now, I don't think he's fallen necessarily. I don't think he's lowered his stock any more than he already has. I know Josh and I probably disagree on that. He hasn't had a terrible camp, I would say. He had a couple of good days, and he certainly had a couple of bad days. He had a pretty decent preseason outing against the Patriots, didn't play against the Bengals, but he's certainly kind of on like the fan hate list, if that makes any sense, which I also think kind of drives opinions relating to his performance so far.
I guess I'm okay with saying same, and that's where I'm going to leave it at and just go to the next player, and that's Kadarius Tony, who was really, really good that first week of training camp, was making all the highlights. Everyone was hyped up. Then he got injured, hasn't played in either of the 2 preseason games, hasn't really practiced, so it kind of evens out to same. If it was on the same trajectory, he was still healthy and just being consistent and kind of like average, we would still be risen because of that first week, because of how good he was then. But now, it's just kind of same. But it's definitely making Giants fans worry. It's another one where it's like, according to Giants fans, technically he's fallen because it's another year with another injury. And now it's like 2 years in a row with Kadarius Tony since we drafted him being injured. Is he injury prone? Seems to be like that is the answer. And it'll be a question mark on when Tony is back, if he's going to play week 1. Those are all valid questions too, because it is valid. He's been injured for a few weeks now, so we'll have to wait and see. All right, Alex, let's go to it. We're going to do this live here on the video. We're going to do
separately.
Six or seven.
Whatever you think the roster is going to be, 6 or 7 spots, whichever you want to do. So I'm going to go. You can do whatever you want.
Do it separately?
Yeah.
We did the rise and fall together, though.
Yeah, I know, but now it's going separately.
All right,
now
whatever.
It's going separately.
You go first.
I don't know. All right, I got Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Tony, Wandel Robinson. I think that's the obvious 4. Darius Slayton, because I'm a supporter.
Of course.
Darius Slayton, that's the 5th. Richie James, 6th. And I think they are going to go with 7 wide receivers, and I'm going to add Colin Johnson as my 7th. I have no David Sills, no Alex Bachmann.
So I don't think Shepard will count against the roster because we came into this predicting that he wouldn't be there. So
I guess 6 then, the 6 besides Shepard.
6.
But eventually it's going to be like 6 or 7, so whatever you want to say for that one.
I'm going to just go my negative self here and just say I have no idea what's going on with Shepard. I don't want to give assumptions and be like, oh, the Giants are only going to do 6, so they're expecting Shepard back quickly. I'm going to do 7. Now, I'm not including Shepard here. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So, well, Alex, you realize if they do 7, it's not like, ooh, like why are you giving me that face?
I think if they do 7 right now, then they're going to have to cut one of them eventually, though, for Shepard.
So, Alex, they can bring him down to the practice squad.
That's true. They could. I'm not sure some of those guys will.
Don't give me those faces. Let me do my list, and you can give me faces.
Go ahead.
So with my 7 guys, I have the same starting, basically. The Kenny Galladay's, why am I saying it like plural? Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Tony, Wandel Robinson, Darius Slayton as well, Richie James. I said Sterling Shepard. What am I doing? Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Tony, Wandel Robinson, Sterling Shepard. No. Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Tony, Wandel Robinson, Darius Slayton, Richie James. That's 6, right?
5.
5? 5. Golladay, Tony.
That's 5. It's 5.
Slayton.
It's 5.
Golladay, Tony, Robinson, Slayton, James. 5. Yes. How did I get 6? Don't know. Then, like you had Colin Johnson, that's 6. And do I dare, Alex?
Don't David Sills on
Do I dare? David Sills makes the roster. Why not? I'll do it now. You'll get our official predictions closer to the 90-man roster cut down. We're hoping to do our 3rd and final of this, at least offseason, 53-man roster predictions right before the official one comes out. And I guess that'll be our official one. But for now, there you go. This video has gone on long enough. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it this long, hit that subscribe button below. Drop a like. We will see you next time for another video here on the Giant Take YouTube channel. Peace.